I loved this book dearly, and I will definitely be reading more Walter Tevis. This was stunning. There, now that I've got this properly hyped up and possibly even misled you a bit, let's talk about Mockingbird by Walter Tevis, because this was an interesting experience for me, possibly even like a little bit of a roller coaster ride of an experience as I was reading through the book, because there was even a certain point in the book where I wasn't necessarily enjoying it, and I thought it was actually starting to lose me a bit, only for it to rope me back in and stick a landing I not only didn't see coming, but was so much better and profoundly impacting than I ever imagined when I started reading this tiny little book. Mockingbird is a science fiction novel that's set in a future where everything is dying. Everything has pretty much been automated and machines have taken over, or at least automation has taken over. Humanity is being fed pills that make them both content and infertile. So now mankind is slowly aging and no more babies are being born, while nobody is really maintaining these mechanical systems anymore, and all of these mechanical systems are slowly starting to fail and break down and not work anymore. In a sense, the entire world is just slowly dying. And then in the story, we have three main characters: a man, a woman, and an android. And the android in particular is quite interesting because he is not only the pinnacle of mankind's technological achievements, I would say, he also is a perfect recreation of a human, and his mind is based on a recreation of a genius that existed when he was created. He just has certain things that have been tweaked in his cognitive abilities. They have removed any ability of his to self-terminate. So he, not only that does he not age, and he cannot break down and fail, he is kind of self-healing. So he will live forever, and his ability to terminate himself has been removed. No matter how hard he tried, he could never essentially commit suicide. So he is doomed to exist in this dying world perpetually, forever. This, of course, is going to cause certain problems for him because essentially his mind is a true human mind that has to go on longer than any human mind has ever had to do before, and he does not have certain options as, say, an out that other people would, and he's aware of this as you go through the book. Then we have the man, and the man will be kind of taught how to read, which is not only something people don't know how to do anymore, it's actually illegal according to the machines that run the place, and he will then teach the woman how to read, which is even more illegal. This then is essentially the setup for the book, the getting the ball rolling, so to speak. And it is a very kind of almost typical setup for a science fiction novel. And at the same time, it's got this real nice vibe, this real nice classic science fiction atmosphere to the book as you're going through it. And I really settled in. I really got into the flow, into the groove, and it was so nice. I loved every second of it. I wouldn't say it was the greatest science fiction book I ever read, but it was definitely good, and I definitely really settled into enjoying what I was reading. Then, at about the 1/3 mark, there is a hard shift, and we definitely transition into a different section of the book, which we then settle into that section, and I started to not enjoy myself. I didn't really like the direction that he took it, and what this new setting that we kind of settle into I wasn't engaging with it, and I wasn't enjoying it. And this is the point where I'm like, man, I don't know. Not that this was a bad book or a bad experience. I would not call it bad, but it was starting to feel mid. And that's not a good feeling when I was really in this comfort food zone that the book started in. After settling here for just a little bit longer than I would have liked the book to do so, it does shift again and moves in a direction that I did expect it to go and did kind of see coming before pausing yet again. But this time I enjoyed the section a lot more, and now I'm settling into a groove again of learning and growing with this character as he moves through the plot. before the book finally brings everything around and brings it home to an ending with a thematical and emotional payoff that far exceeded anything that I could have ever seen coming by my initial introduction to the story, that initial groove that I was enjoying so much, that I felt had a specific direction, that I thought had a specific trajectory and maybe a certain level of payoff that you would expect from that kind of a story. And what I got, like I said, was so much better than what I could have imagined at the start of it. It was just, I was so satisfied by the end of this book. It is essentially a book about growth, humanity, and the human experience. It's not even necessarily about the devastation and the end of the world, because essentially everything is dying. But that's not the point. That's the backdrop. The point is humanity and living and growing and learning and experiencing what it is to be human, what it is to learn, what it is to be naive in a certain situation and be forced to move and grow and develop as a person, and in ways you don't want to do, forced into situations you don't want to be in, forced to make decisions you don't want to make. And then at the end of the day, now you get back to maybe say a set point that you started at, but you've grown and evolved and matured so much over the course of the story that this situation that you started in and that you wanted, you may still want, and it may still be home and feel like home, but you are not the same person that you were in the beginning, and you no longer want the same thing in the same way. And it's just this gigantic metaphor for life. And oh my gosh, it's so hard to explain, but it was genuinely, as uncomfortable as the story was to kind of get through at certain points, it's such a mirror image of how uncomfortable life is in certain situations, just to end up in the same spot as a different person, if that makes any sense whatsoever. And then there's the way that the story is told, because essentially it is an epistolic novel. It is mostly told from the man's perspective, and it is told as kind of like logs that he sometimes records, sometimes he writes them down, and it is essentially day 1, and he goes on to explain. Day 3 goes on to explain. Day 27 goes on. And that's the main brunt of the story, although the major sections of the story are bookended by sections that are from the perspective of the android. So we kind of get to see how he sees and experiences things. And then sporadically throughout, every once in a while, we'll get a chapter from the perspective of the female. And it's absolutely brilliant, because we really get settled into the mind of the man as we're going through the story. And every time we get, especially interjections from the female character, it's a different perspective on maybe the same thing or something that has happened. And you realize just how differently she sees and experiences the exact same things that he's experiencing. And like I said, you get so locked into his mind that you don't realize. And it's not that he's an unreliable narrator. It is just a shift in perspective. And Walter really lets you see that these people are seeing and experiencing the same thing in quite different ways. And a lot of times it really serves as a stark highlight as to just how much one or the other of the two characters has to learn yet, and how far they have to go as a person, or just their level of understanding of the world that they exist in. But then, like I said, with pretty much the major sections being bookended by perspectives from the android, it really takes what could have been a cardboard cutout of this android character and really fleshes him out, makes him three-dimensional in ways that are really interesting, makes him extremely complicated from the perspective of how he sees and experiences the worlds and his thoughts and his emotions, and what his driving motivations are for some of the things that he does throughout the course of the story, which, once again, could have been so two-dimensional, but we really get that deeper view, that deeper perspective, but only for little bits of it as you go. Just enough to flesh him out and make the whole thing feel more impactful and more important. I can't give this book anything but a 9 out of 10. It was so good. And even the dip that I was experiencing in the story, in hindsight, made the story better because, like I said, it was that real growing and learning and that real feeling like it was just a metaphor for actual life and actual experience. I don't know. It was so good. I almost said every minute of it, but I did have that drag. Anyway, whatever, it doesn't matter. I loved it. 9 out of 10. And as always, everybody, the link for my Patreon's in the description below. The link for my Discord's in the description below. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.